Atope Ogunbodede. You can please have your seats, please. We are here for the 360th inaugural lecture today. Will be delivered by Professor Emmanuel Olukemi Rotimi. Professor Kemi Rotimi is a thoroughbred IFE product, having obtained all its academic qualifications from this university. The Bachelor of Arts in Education 1980, Master of Arts in History 1984, and the PhD degree in 1990. He rose through the ranks to become a professor in 2015. Professor Rotimi has devoted over 40 years to the study of the history of the police and policing in Nigeria. Apart from his book on the defunct Native Authority local government police forces in the northern and western regions, he has also authored numerous articles on the subject area. Professor Kemi Rotimi is internationally recognized and is somebody who has actually shaped the policies on policing in this country. Professor Rotimi will speak this evening on the odyssey of a historian of the police. Professor Kemi Rotimi, you are invited to deliver your lecture.
Councilor, sir. When I look back on my career as a researcher into the history of the police and policing in Nigeria, I recall two stanzas in the song authored by John Bunyan in 1684, titled Pilgrim's Progress. Bunyan wrote the words during his 12-year prison sentence for refusing to conform to the official state church. The first stanza reads, "He who would valiant be against all disaster, let him in constancy follow the master. There is no discouragement shall make him once relent his first avowed intent to be a pilgrim." The master, in my case, was Tekena Nitonye Tamron, late emeritus professor of history, pioneer historian of the police in Nigeria, and vice chancellor, University of Ibadan, 1975-1979. He had written a book on the better-known Nigeria police force, published in 1970 with the title The Police in Modern Nigeria, 1861 to 1965. Between 1983 and 1990, I worked on two topics related to the history of police in Nigeria. My focus was on the then little-known Native Authority, the local government police forces that existed in the whole of the defunct northern region and parts of the western region, from quite early in colonial times through independence and the advent of military rule in Nigeria. As a relevant aside, the eastern region did not have the forces because of the initial difficulty by the British colonial authorities in identifying political authority structure in that region. But for the coup of January 1966, the Michael Okpara government would have launched the forces in 1966. The small posse of the forces that had existed in the Benin division of the old western region was abolished in 1964 following the creation of the Midwestern region in 1963. The climax of my examinable research endeavors was the production of a doctoral thesis titled A History of Native Administration Police Forces in Nigeria, 1900 to 1970, in 1990. The outcome of the examination was a just reward for a remarkable work of scholarship. Subsequently, I did 2 postdoctoral researches in a bid to revise the thesis for publication in 1991 and 1995. The revised work was published in 2001 under the title, The Police in the Federal State, the Nigerian Experience. I did further research on the subject thereafter, the major highlight being a 6-month archival search and oral interviews in the United Kingdom with retired colonial officers of the Nigeria Police Force in 2010. The trip was largely generously supported by the Lagos State government under His Excellency Babatunde Raji Fashola. I have utilized aspects of the research to revise the book for a reprint edition released in 2014. A more comprehensive revision is in the works. The book is a standard text at police colleges, academies, and universities in Nigeria and beyond. Many Nigerians think of policing as a body of men and or women constituted by political authority to enforce laws made by the governing elite came with colonial rule. No. A major thrust of my academic research into the subject is to show that prior to colonial rule, centralized state systems in Nigeria had bodies of men located in the palaces of paramount rulers who did the duty of enforcing laws, apprehending criminals, and bringing violators to justice. This lecture has 3 parts. In the first part, I will describe my efforts to use my research to effect policy change about policing in Nigeria. In the second part, I present the history of community policing and demonstrate how the Nigerian state missed the opportunity to embed community policing into its early republic. In the third and final part of my lecture, I present a few recommendations. The soundness of these recommendations is in their surprising simplicity. I encourage you to be patient while I walk you through the lecture. My career has demonstrated the best example of scholarship for public good. My studies of policing in Nigeria led me to significant conclusions and policy recommendations that I immediately put across to successive Nigerian governments. In the next few paragraphs, I turn attention to 3 of such efforts I made to influence policing policy in Nigeria. If proper attention had been paid by the stakeholders, Nigeria would have been guaranteed better policing, better police service delivery, and by extension, might have avoided the paths that led to the 2010 EndSARS protests and the consequent disasters. Setting up the Police Performance Monitoring Unit and its abortion. In 2004, I was contracted to consult for the Ministry of Police Affairs by the Honorable Minister Aloe Broderick Bozimo. I set up the Police Performance Monitoring Unit in August. The PPMU was an administrative body that was established to receive and collate complaints against members of the Nigeria Police Force and process such complaints through to the relevant police disciplinary units or agencies for investigation and discipline. The unit would monitor the actions taken by the relevant disciplinary bodies and give feedback by the complainants. The idea that citizens could and should play a role in determining the appropriate exercise of police power is based on fundamental notions of fairness and accountability. The police derive their authority from the citizenry, which accepts certain limited constraints upon its freedom in the interest of securing the public safety. The proponents of non-official civilian oversight of policing contend that it is appropriate and necessary that investing in police power in a law enforcement agency, which power at times includes the use of lethal force, civilians must have a role in determining the standards by which they are policed. The PPMU was a purely advisory body. Its function did not involve legal procedures. The PPMU's jurisdiction stopped at the police high commands and the police service commission's doors. The unit was created by the Director of Police Affairs not to usurp the police high commands or the police service commission's disciplinary authority, but rather in response to Nigerian citizens' need for some street-level understanding of policing, along with some meaningful measure of accountability that started right there in the street, at the moment a police officer and the ordinary citizen engage each other. The details of what we did skipped. Nigerians were generally happy about the existence of the PPMU, as evidenced by the reactions that I got through emails, text messages, and phone calls from all parts of the country. With cooperation from the Honorable Minister, I worked hard to ensure that by the end of the year 2004, the PPMU would have become very well registered in the consciousness of many Nigerians. Unfortunately, the leadership of the Nigeria Police Force at the time, working in league with some civil servants saboteurs, scuttled the program, and the unit was aborted by the end of the year. My refusal to cooperate with a scheme to pad the 2005 budget of the ministry, using the PPMU as conduit, was the last straw in my testy relationship with the displaced civil servants. The desire of the Honorable Minister to extend my tenure as consultant to coordinator for the whole of 2005 came unstuck. As I walked away from the ministry's assignment, I consoled myself with these lines from the second stanza of John Bunyan's The Pilgrim's Progress. Whoso beset him round with dismal stories, do but themselves confound his strength the more is. No foes shall stay his might, though he with giants fight, he will make good his right to be a pilgrim. Like a pilgrim, I returned to my teaching and research position at Ife and the active pursuit of police history research from January 2005. Subsequently, from August 2005 to July 2006, I was away at the Kennesaw State University, Kennesaw, Georgia, USA on sabbatical leave. As an relevant aside, it's appropriate to note that in April 2021, the incumbent Minister of Police Affairs, Alhaji Muhammad M. Dingadi, inaugurated the Police Public Complaints Committee, PPCC, to handle complaints against police personnel in the country. Mr. Dingadi said the committee was a specialized institution created to deal strictly with complaints against police personnel. The minister said the idea was to provide the populace with opportunity to channel their grievances on the misconduct of police personnel to the appropriate quarters for necessary actions. In an oblique reference to the PPMU, which I had created, that I had set up under one of his predecessors, 2004, the minister said that PPCC had been in existence over the years, but had been moribund due to lack of funds. As I have indicated in this lecture, there was more to the death of the PPMU than lack of funds. According to him, if the PPCC has been active, it would have provided adequate channel through which affected Nigerians would have been ventilating their grievances on police brutality. He said the tragedy that befell the country during the Ashensas protests would have been averted if the PPCC was active. My advice to the minister is that he should not be dispirited if his program suffers the same fate as my original. For one thing, the leadership of the MPF in the 2020s may be as uncomfortable as it was in 2004, even if the officers in charge then are different from the ones in office now. There may also be disgruntled civil servants working in cahoots with a disobliging leadership in the MPF to sabotage the work of the committee. Second assignment with the Minister of Police Affairs, 2013 to 2015. The indications are that the records of my work with the ministry in 2004 were not destroyed. That was why in 2013, I was again contracted to serve as one of 5 consultants by another Minister of Police Affairs, Navy Captain Caleb Olubolade retired, to prepare a national policy on public safety and security. The lead consultant was Professor Femi Odekule, now of blessed memory. A renowned criminologist, he led creditably and competently, and it was a delight to work with. The 3 other consultants were Dr. Tukungawa, Malam Shafi Musa, and retired Commissioner of Police, Mr. Lawrence Alobi. There were 2 superior officers of the MPF in the team. By the time the draft policy was ready for submission in 2015, the Minister of Police Affairs had been scrapped, and its remit was under the Minister of Internal Affairs, headed by General A.B. Dambazao, retired. The summary of what we did then follows. In realization of the fact that the world is a global village and the need to have some experiential knowledge of international best practices and comparability, the panel scheduled a rationalized 3-nation study tour, but eventually visited only one, Israel, in December 2014. The panel study tour in Israel had well-organized sessions with governmental institutions, security, private professional organizations, and consultants on public safety and security, all of which provided useful insights and lessons towards the realization of the mandate of the panel. Madam Registrar, after this lecture, any memo from your office in the short time left for me to serve this university that does not carry the title JP will not be acknowledged, not to talk of being replied. Rotimi, JP. In the final report that was submitted to government, pathways, mechanisms, procedures, and resource avenues for the implementation of the content that will guarantee interagency cooperation for the delivery of more effective safety and security for the citizenry were enunciated. I must pause at this juncture to announce the presence of one of the movers of that committee's assignment, Mr. Deshola Olushade, who is now the permanent secretary FCT, was an administrative staff, and the passion and commitment he put into the work is still reflected in his career advancement since 2013. Mr. Olushade, I thank you for attending this lecture, and the other civil servants who worked with us, Noratu and the others were wonderful in their conduct. Noratu Batagarawa eventually retired as a permanent secretary too, but the other civil servants were wonderful. Thank you very much. Myself sponsored 5 city interactive forums, March to May 2018. Still on my desire to contribute to the national case for more effective policing, I mobilized resources for 5 city interactive forums between March and May 2018. The forums were held in Ile-Ife, Abuja, Zaria, Efun, Warri, and Lagos, organized on the theme of approaches to the policing of a perplexed society. Participants included people from academia, security agencies, civil society groups, and other stakeholders. The rationale for the interactive forum is there, but I'll go on to say that I'll talk about the outcome of the forums because of time. Suffice it to say, just iterate here the outcomes of the forums. 1, there is substantial ignorance among Nigerians, some of whom are superior officers of the Nigeria Police Force, of the history of policing in Nigeria. And when I say this, I mean it in all seriousness. Since the publication, the first print of my book in 2001, about 4,000 copies of that book have since been produced. Many of it is in circulation in Nigeria. But when police officers speak, you wonder, do they know anything about this policing in Nigeria? A top Senate person a few years back said a security expert gave him a paper that said that the MOPOL was created in the Second Republic. I couldn't laugh, I couldn't cry, but whenever I meet that man, I will still ask him to ask for a refund and give me the money. MOPO was created in 1963, the details of which are in other books and in my other studies that I'm going to pursue upon stepping down from regular teaching pretty soon. 2, what ignorance leads to is the assumption that many of the challenges inhibiting the provision of desired service by officers of the MPF are of recent origin. They are not. The long years of military rule, 1966 to 1969, minus the 4 isolated years of Second Republic, and the appropriation of policing duties and consequently resources, witnessed severe neglect of the MPF as reflected in the inadequate recruitment of personnel and the poor provision of equipment and other welfare matters. 3, the 2 main challenges are under-resourcing in quantum of personnel and equipment and inadequate welfare provisions for the personnel. 4, participants were made aware of the huge chronic disparity in the welfare provisions for the officer class and the non-commissioned ranks, and were made to appreciate that until the gulf is substantially bridged between these 2 groups, not much may be achieved in desired service delivery, especially bearing in mind that the policing that touches the lives of the generality of citizens is done by members of the non-commissioned ranks. On deregulating ownership of the police, participants who clamored for allowing states to own police organizations knew that effecting the necessary amendments to the Constitution to bring their wish to reality could be a challenge. They also expressed reservations about the ability of most states to pay personnel and equip the forces. They were also worried about the high probability of the governing elite in the states to restrain themselves from misusing the police. 6, participants who favored the retention of the one police organization, the MPF, would want a substantial increase in the number of personnel to reflect the population size. Advocated for a more meaningful devolution of administrative control from the force headquarters using the zonal command structures. Now the rest of the recommendations are already in what you have. But I'll say a little more on community policing, which is one of the highlights there. The details of my views on the 2 topical issues of the practice of community policing in the quest for better police service delivery and the clamor for the constitutional deregulation of policing so that states can own their own police forces are contained in some of my television interviews in the course of this Fourth Republic, especially between 2004 and 2022. Now you have 11 such interviews to pick and choose from. The most recent ones, because of the other matters involved, made me persona non grata in some university circles. Thank God the plant I bought this inaugural lecture came on stock, because I've demonstrated to my traducers that I have not studied policing for 40 years for nothing. In the interactive discourse I had with a syndicate from the NIPS on 30 April 2018, I chose to speak on community policing in Nigeria, anchoring after a discarded practice. Because the theme for the SEC for the year was strengthening internal security framework and community policing in Nigeria, models, policy options, and strategies. I declared that before the term community policing became a fad from the mid-1990s, some parts of Nigeria had had a fruitful experience of the phenomenon, but it was not so labeled. And no thanks to the intrusion of the military into politics and governance for most of 33 years after independence, precisely from 1966 to 1999, the robust community policing practice that undergirded the setting up of the native authority and local police forces of the northern and western regions of Nigeria was abandoned when those forces were abolished between 1968 and 1970. One of my finest days was 6 days back. There's a document that I had looked for 25 years. about how the Native Authority Police were abolished and integrated into the Nigeria Police Force. Eventually, an American scholar shared that report with me in December, and I've been looking for General Gowan. Then I got a call 5 days ago, and it was on General Gowan. So soon after this lecture, I'll be sitting with the old man to discuss how and why the NA police was abolished. Because the wisdom of 1970 has become the foolishness of 2022. When the British went out to conquer and govern, they were guided by two philosophies of policing. One was to let strangers police strangers. That philosophy undergirded the setting up of the armed government police force used to contain opposition to the establishment and consolidation of colonial rule. Most of the time, the conquest missions were dubbed pacification raids. The philosophy privileged the enforcement of prescribed laws over the prevention and or detection of crimes. That philosophy still informs the deployment of personnel of the Nigeria Police Force up to today. The other philosophy was for likes to police likes. It was a philosophy that derived from the knowledge that the colonialists had gained of the elaborate administrative structures in centralized state systems in pre-colonial Africa. Systems that showed that among palace officials were subjects or officials that did the primary duties of the police, prevention and or detection of crime and the enforcement of prescribed state laws. In the police in the federal state, the Nigerian experience for public 2001, I provide details of the origins, development, functions, and demise or abolition of the Native Authorities local police forces that existed then. So I won't go into the details of what is already in my book. Whoever is here who has not read the book, you contact me for a fee. But if you tarry a little, the second edition, proper second edition will be out, and I'll be presenting it when I'm retiring at 66. For lack of time and space, so I'm leaving out so many details while presenting, but the details are in a copy of the lecture that you have. Now, in general, the provision for any police forces in 1954 Local Government Law, 55 Police Declaration, and the 1959 rules all affirm the absolute control of native authorities over their forces. They were designed to weld any policeman to the native authority that employed him. Unlike his counterpart in the Western region, he was not an any policeman only in name, but indeed. The case studies that follow begin with those which provide good examples of the complementary relationship between the MPC government and native authorities. They also reveal the extent to which native authorities could go to ensure their power bases. Here I'm talking about the native authority police system in the Emirates of Northern Nigeria. That was community policing par excellence. The current edition of my book carries a photograph of Malam Ali Mustafa as Chief of Police Adamawa before he ascended to the throne as Lamido of Adamawa. Fortunately for me, my old man friend, late Alaji Ahmed Joda, took me to visit the old man in 2003 before he passed on. May he so rest in peace. Let me conclude this segment of my lecture by remarking that with some tinkering on the basis of changes in the socio-political environment, the discarded NA policing system, especially as practiced in the Emirates of Northern Nigeria, would have shown the beauty of community policing today, and Nigeria would not have had to be shopping for models, policy options, and strategies. The syndicate that I met in Benin, I made that point very clear to them, and the futility of attempting to graft onto a structure that is not a good soil, what they are trying to do in force headquarters now. my very dark conclusion there is that as community policy is prosecuted with unstable organization and leadership, Nigeria will always have community and policing as separate entities, but not community policing. The worst fear that those who have spoken against the creation of state police forces harbor is that the officers and men of such local forces will be used to tyrannize political opponents. The ready example these antagonists of the idea cite is the misuse of the any police by politicians in the old northern and western regions during the First Republic. The commentators, who include retired or serving MPF officers, journalists, and public affairs analysts, comment as if misuse of the police was a peculiar phenomenon with that type of police organization, or as if the phenomenon was unknown during the Second Republic when we had only the Nigeria Police Force, or indeed in this Fourth Republic. But I like to cite the example of three Nigerians, Akemo Boreo, Sojo Dunjo, and Afolabi. The details are in the lecture, the copy of which you have. Now, I get into very emotional territory under what I call an unrelenting appeal to close the welfare gap between the officer class and the other ranks. Unless the welfare gap between the officer class and the other ranks of the Nigeria Police Force is significantly bridged, Nigerians will never get the police service they desire and deserve from the bulk of men and women of the force. Police-police relations in the matter of welfare have some history, a bit of which you can examine here. In their relationship with subordinates, some officers of the police, either of the defunct Native Authority, local police, or the MPF, exhibit conduct which could only have encouraged the other ranks to seek to oppress others over whom they think they have power. These others are invariably largely members of the public. Some of the very irritating details are there, but thank you all for research. In 2018, I stumbled on a document prepared under the leadership of Alhaji MD Yusufu to look into the welfare challenges of inspectors and other ranks. I accepted some paragraphs there, but the more painful, or the most painful, are the ones that have played up in the matter of accommodation. Under a paragraph there, the committee found there are a contingent of policemen in several states who, since they arrived there, have been living with their families under mango and other trees. And indeed, in one case, found police officers making babies on the back of disused vehicles in some police stations. These are the same men you request to go to the highway to catch robbers and apprehend other criminals, and not step properly overnight, carrying a gun, and then you are driving, your glass is tinted, the man is asking you to stop, and you ask him, who are you? By the time he tells you who you are, you will have made it to heaven. And there's this bottle of ogogoros by the side, poured into your mouth, and then the man says, now God just save me. Now, in December 2010, Hafiz Ringim as IGP under President Jonathan almost wrote his name in gold when he lamented that daily we receive complaints from men in Abuja and outside that their pay have been unduly cut. Some state commands pay constables 16,000, some pay 18,000 without reasons. We are going to change those responsible for this. Government money is not a free thing for all to be converted to personal use. I received complaints about how salaries are deliberately delayed. It shouldn't happen in the police because it's an embodiment of law and order. Salaries and emoluments that should have been paid by 27th and 28th of the month drag on and on. I will stamp this out completely. I have no tolerance for such conduct. It will appear that the IGP Ringim did move to correct some of the anomalies because after his lamentation, it was reported that 6 pay officers of the Nigeria Police Force were on Thursday, 23 December 2010, arraigned in Abuja for alleged conspiracy, forgery, and fraudulent practices. The named officers were from the Abia and Ondo commands. It was further reported that a group of pay officers tampered with wage increases approved for each cadre of the police personnel, thereby stalling the salary payment process. The officers are accused of deducting up to 20,000 from each from the salaries of junior colleagues, while the salaries of senior officers were modeled up in such a manner that it became difficult to confirm their actual take-home pay. Other states affected in the scam included Kogi, Kwara, Nasarawa, Kaduna, and Lagos. The outcome of that case was not known before Ringim lost office in early 2012. But beyond bench coppers, I knew and I've learned also about dedicated and courageous police officers. In 1949, 6 Nigerian inspectors were to go for a promotion course in the United Kingdom. They were Emmanuel Olufunwa, Odofin Bello, Joel Okoli, Jeffrey Nodi, Louis Orok-Edet, and Patrick Okudi-Chude. Excerpts from their confidential reports forwarded to the selection board of the Nigeria Police deserve mention. On Sub-Inspector Emmanuel Olufunwa, it was said that he was completely honest and reliable and proved himself a good all-round officer with the good name of the force at heart. He went on to become the second Nigerian Commissioner of Police, Western Region, 1966 to 1971. If the projector had been good enough, I was going to show some of these officers and even some of their children. Papa Olufunwa was on his deathbed when I met him in 1984, but I've since met 2 of his children practicing medicine in the UK. Wonderful children. On Inspector Odofin Bello, it was reported that he's a hard-working, reliable officer and very intelligent. He commands the respect of his subordinates. He has received excellent reports from all officers under whom he has served. He eventually became the first Nigerian Commissioner of Police, Western Region, 1964 to 66. Those of you who are familiar with Ebenezer Obey and Sonny Ade singing the praise of one Odofin Bello. That's the eldest son of late Commissioner of Police Odofin Bello. That was in the 70s. Then this university has enjoyed the services of one of the daughters of late Odofin Bello. One of the most committed administrative officers that we have ever had is Mrs. Mary Olufunke Lawansin. She's near Odofin Bello, to those who may not know. But that's one of the most committed administrative staff that we have ever had. On Sub-Inspector Joel Okoli, it was remarked that he's intelligent and has a good presence, has received consistently good reports. On Sub-Inspector Jeffrey Nodi, it was stated he's hardworking, intelligent, and reliable. He's of good appearance and has plenty of character. On Sub-Inspector Louis Orok-Edet, it was reported that he's a very intelligent and active man. He can adapt himself well to new ideas and has proved efficient in controlling radio cars. He became the first Nigerian Inspector General of Police, 1964, and served in 1966. On Patrick C. Okudi, it was remarked that he is an extremely intelligent, hardworking young man and has plenty of character. He possesses drive and gets the best out of his men. The rare courage displayed by Mr. Melville Ekundai Kushika Roberts, the first DIG to Louis Edet, when he was politically victimized in 1965, also qualifies for mention here. He was forced out of the MPF, allegedly for unproven acts of misdemeanor, but actually because of his audacity to review downwards the punishment that a powerful northern politician had caused to be meted to a latecomer police detail. So embarrassing was his ordeal that the Prime Minister lamented the unfair conduct of the Police Service Commission in forcing the man to retire from service. Even the chairman of the commission confessed to the fact that he was acting on orders from above. Mr. Roberts fought his first disengagement from 1965 to 1971 in a Lagos High Court and got a deserved victory that restored his name and dignity, if not his office. I'm happy to note that a very fine daughter of Mr. Roberts is here present this evening as my guest. And that's the lady of the tube, Bimbo Roberts, later Bimbo Oloyede. Lady B, thank you for coming. And you are the proud daughter of a very proud man. The man was treated with all kinds of blandishment. And to make the punishment real, his traducers procured some Yoruba officers and one or two judges who had earned infamy from some past conduct to chase him out of the police force. They asked him at some point to be ambassador to Australia and literally told them, Urinyuda, he was not going anywhere to clear his name. And he did, and I have the judgment. So it's not policing is not all about bad eggs or bad police officers. You also have some very good ones, and those with courage. An eminent elder statesman's desire to press me into national service, Alhaji Ahmed Joda and I, 2003 to 2021. I first met Alhaji Ahmed Joda, distinguished civil servant and eminent elder statesman, in the home of a retired Inspector General of Police in Abuja on a Sunday in early March 2003. From that day till he breathed his last on Friday, 13 August 2021 at 91, at his home in Yola, Adamawa State, we maintained very close contact by phone calls, emails, and visits to his homes in Abuja, Kaduna, and Yola. I prefer to refer to him as a mentor, but he was more comfortable with calling me a good and loyal friend. He was impressed by my seeming deep knowledge of issues on policing and cultivated my friendship with passion. Towards the end of March 2003, I traveled with him to Yola to see the then Lamido of Adamawa, who had before ascending the throne headed the Adamawa Police Force. Alhaji Joda graciously chaired a one-day consultative forum organized by the Independent Policy Group on improving policing in Nigeria, held on Tuesday, 1st April 2003 in Abuja. I coordinated the forum. The forum was held in 2 sessions. The details of the outcomes are on the succeeding paragraphs. But here is the big deal for me. When in 2013 we were tasked with another assignment from the Ministry of Police Affairs, it was my responsibility to reach out to Nigerians to come help us with ideas. I delight to extract from Alhaji Joda's response to a general solicitation of support from friends and associates over that assignment. What he said, I have there a bit in extenso, and I don't want to bore you with reading it all. But his conclusion is very interesting. If the authorities are serious, they could begin by accepting that the police are engaged in large-scale extrajudicial killings, torture, rape, and other atrocities. The international organizations and local NGOs are beginning to break their silence. Let us hope that you make a difference this time. Sincerely, Ahmed Joda. When he reached the age of 90 in February 2020, he was hosted to a dinner in Abeokuta by former President Obasanjo. He and I were the first 2 guests to arrive at Abeokuta a day before the dinner. His response to the toast was a reiteration of the contents of his 2013 mail reproduced above. I subsequently made 2 trips to Yola in March of that year to prepare a paper for a presidential commission on police reforms, which he was to present to President Buhari, but the COVID pandemic intruded, and as they say, the rest is history. As the prayer goes for Muslim faithful who have transited, may Allah forgive him his sins and grant him al-Jannat Firdaus. In a few months from now, my plan for the immortalization of this elder statesman, which has been endorsed by the children, will be unveiled. Now, but was I busy over 40 years just reading code files? Yes, but I also derived a lot of fun. And I thought I could share the fun which you will enjoy as you go back to your various places of abode. About 9 of them or so. The one that I think I can highlight, the third one, interview for police applicants in Akure in February 1946. The Superintendent of Nigeria Police Force, based in Lesha, Morgan, but with jurisdiction extending to the old Ondo province, February 1946, in the course of examination in law and general knowledge for serving policemen held at Ado-Ekiti, career no war, compiled a few howlers from questions as they are being shared unedited. One of them, who is Stalin? A Coco commander, Japanish commander in war, Prime Minister of England, Secretary of State for the colonies, President Benin Native Court. The sixth answer, he take his neighbor thing without permit, just like Putin is doing now. Taking his neighbor thing without permit. Who is Winston Churchill? First answer, former private secretary to the governor. Then the second one, Prime Minister of Japan. Then is President Truman. First answer, leader of the 81st Division, SNAC. Then the second one, Prime Minister of the CMS. Then what is PWD? Public Water Department. But the next answer, please wake dog. After if dog is sleeping, if you wake dog, you have done PWD. Then what is forgery? To commit rape and to read another man's letter. There you have others. And then, but one that is particularly titillating is the sixth one, compromises in the Temple of Justice. A British barrister went to Ilorin for a case, ended up in the bed of the judge before whom she was to appear. And all of our clients won the case, including one that was particularly glaring. So if this has happened now, don't make it look like they are new phenomena. Then there is this one that you may find a little difficult to interpret, but I'll help you, I'll just assist you. As I've said, I grew close to Alhaji Joda. So once when I was visiting, he had many tortoises in his compound. Then I saw one of them committing offense against public morality. The photos are there. Don't ask me what exactly they mean. You can use your imagination. But just as I've noted, as it is with human beings, so is it with tortoises. Then my good friend in England in 2010, we took a break from our interviews, and I saw a tombstone. I didn't know what terrier means, but I saw a gravestone to terrier and the daughter. And when I asked him, he said, it was my dog and the daughter. I couldn't laugh, I couldn't cry. The one that takes the cake is the last one. Appeal for reinstatement by a sacked civil servant in Calabar, February 1929. Even the Vice Chancellor says there is no time, I will read this one because it enliven the atmosphere for us. Kind sir, on opening this epistle, you will behold the work of a dejobbed person and a very bewifed and much childrenized gentleman who was violently dejobbed in a twinkling by your good self. For heaven's sake, sir, consider this catastrophe as falling on your own head and remind yourself as walking home to the moon's end, at the moon's end of 5 savage wives and 16 voracious children with your pocket filled with non-existent pounds, shillings, and pence. Not a solitary suspense. Pity my horrible state when being dejobbed and proceeding with a heart and intestines filled with misery to this den of doom. Myself did greedily contemplate culpable homicide, but him who did protect Daniel safely through the lion's den will protect his servant in his home of evil. As to the reason given by your good self, inquire for my dejobment. The incrimination was laziness. No, sir. It was impossible that myself, who has pitched 16 infant children into this valley of tears, can have a lazy atom in his mortal frame. And the sudden departure of 11 pounds monthly has left me on the verge of the abyss of destitution and despair. I hope this vision of horror will enrich your dreams this night and good angel will meet and pulverize your heart and nether milestone so that you will awaken, and with as much alacrity as may be compatible with your personal safety, you will hasten to rejubilate your servant. So mote it be. Amen. Yours despairfully, Asukwo Okon Inyang. I didn't author the letter. I found it in the British National Archives in 2010. But my ribs ached when I laughed. I thought I could do the same to others. Now my concluding remarks. I begin by my concluding remarks by commenting on my monomaniacal obsession with the study of the police and policing in Nigeria and my long climb on the academic totem pole. I'll make it short by borrowing hopefully approvingly from the deep philosophical reflection of a friend and colleague, Olukemi, erstwhile lecturer in philosophy in this university, now Professor at Cornell University, Dhaka, USA, on bottom line scholarship. He opined, the proclivity for immediate gratification, the rush to fly through the ranks, the pressure to move on up to ameliorate sometimes desperate material situation, all combine to ensure that scholarship for promotion or bottom line scholarship is the order of the day. So intense is the pressure to publish that the period during which a fundamental inquiry is in gestation is looked upon as one of the idleness for which the serious researcher pays in the loss of promotion opportunities. Bottom line scholars move faster on the academic totem pole. The power that comes with occupying positions at the apex of the pole, combined with the bottom line scholars' capacity for self-reproduction in their portages, have left us with universities top-heavy with mediocre pretenders in the corridors of the academy. It is precisely this restless run of mediocrity which makes the individual achievement of the few who strive to shine even brighter than their ranks would suggest. The Vice Chancellor and distinguished guests, because this lecture is essentially about my career trajectory, its highs and lows, it is appropriate to end it with my assessment of my career as an academic. From obtaining a bachelor's degree in 1980, a master's in 1984, a PhD in 1990, and becoming a professor in 2015, it was a long but steady climb on the academic totem pole. Some friends, associates, admirers, and more mature colleagues wondered about the seeming slow pace. It is to them that I address this script by bird in Aikoyama's The Beautiful Ones Are Not Yet Born. Those who have wings and can fly, let them go. I will journey slowly and surely I too will arrive. So Vice Chancellor, sir, and distinguished guests, everything considered, I think I did arrive. I thank you all for listening.